Okay, this is exercise 8.5 from the Herrick book. Again, it's identifying fallacies. I'm going to go through the first 10 again. That's about how many I can get through in 15 minutes. If you have questions on any of the ones I don't go over, though, feel free to post them to the discussion forum for exercise 8.5. If there are a lot of questions, I can do another video where I talk about some of the other problems in this exercise. I'm noticing a lot of these ones from 1 to 10 have the same answer, so maybe it is the case you'd have questions on the later problems. So again, feel free to post those in the discussion forum. All right. Excuse me. Number 1, social justice means everyone gets his or her just desserts. This means each gets an equal piece of the pie. But if everyone gets an equal piece of the pie, then everyone will be eating nothing but pie all the time, and many will get diabetes because too much pie causes diabetes. So social justice is not a desirable thing to attain. It will cause diabetes. Okay, so the question is, whoops, I don't know what happened there. So the question is, what's wrong with this reasoning? All right, and you can see pretty quickly that the person who would reason like this, something funny is going on with this talk about, pieces of the pie, right? Because when you're talking about pieces of the pie, in the context of social justice, you're generally talking about, like, pie stands for society's wealth, right? Whereas when he's talking about pie that gives you diabetes, right? He's talking about a sweet dessert, right? So he's using the word pie here, he or she, to mean different things, and we know from previous exercises that is called equivocation. So equivocation is when you use the same term but with different meanings in the argument without recognizing that it's being used with different meanings. It's very obvious here, and a lot of these examples are supposed to be obviously bad reasoning, so that they help you see why it's a bad form of reasoning. In this case, it's particularly bad, right? Piece of the pie, obviously, when you're talking about social justice, doesn't mean dessert. All right, number 2, modern societies have conflicts, so every modern person must have conflicts. So you remember, we're going from a premise about societies to a conclusion about individuals within that society. In other words, we're going from a premise about the whole to a conclusion about the parts, right? So you remember there's 2 fallacies that deal with whole to part ratio. So let me show you the text real quick. There's the fallacy of composition. That's where someone assumes that what is true of the parts must also be true of the whole. And then the reverse of that is division, where you assume that what is true of the whole must be true of the parts, right? So here we're going from what's true of the whole must be true of the parts. And again, we just saw that that's called the fallacy of division. So it's important to distinguish those two, but it's easy enough. If you're going from a claim about the whole to claim about the parts, it's division. If you're going from a claim about the parts to claim about the whole, it's composition. Okay, so 3, our team is strong. Pat is on our team, so Pat must be strong, right? So again, team is the whole. Pat is a part. And again, you're going from a premise about the team being strong, so you're going from a premise about the whole to a conclusion about the part, namely Pat. So whole to part means you are using or employing the fallacy of division. Okay. So you just think of it like dividing a whole into parts. Division is from whole to parts. 4, the house must have a huge kitchen for look how big the house is, right? So someone's looking at a big house. The house is the whole, right? And they're thinking something about the kitchen, which is a part. right? So again, the reasoning here goes from whole to part, which is the fallacy of division. Five, the company has performed efficiently, so the employees must all be efficient, right? So the company is the whole, individual employees, if I can spell, are the parts. And this is going from a premise about the company, so about the whole, to a conclusion about the individual employees, so a conclusion about the parts, which is, again, the fallacy of division. All right. Number 6, Captain Spaulding, the most famous of all African explorers, is funny. So all African explorers must be funny. So notice your conclusion is a generalization about all African explorers. And it's made based on one explorer, right? So that's a very quick generalization to make about all African explorers from one African explorer. And remember, hasty just means quick, and generalization just means you're generalizing about a whole group based on a small sample. So hasty generalization is the answer for number 6. Again, if you had other answers or you think there are other legitimate answers, post that in the discussion forum and we can talk about it. Number 7, the Bullitt Foundation is generous, so the people working there are generous. Again, the foundation is the whole. The people, individual working at the foundation are the parts. The premise here is about the whole, and the conclusion is about the parts. So we're going from whole to parts, which, as we've seen many times above, is the fallacy of division. 8, the party was wild. Joe was at the party, so Joe was wild, right? So again, party is the whole. Joe is an individual, is a part of the party. Conclusion goes from a claim about the whole, the party, to a claim about the part, Joe. Therefore, again, we have the fallacy of division. I don't know why he has so many division examples here, but just to give you practice. Number 9, the consumer price index rose last month. So that car you're going to buy has gone up in price over the past month. So again, consumer price index is about all consumer goods, right? Which is another way of saying the whole of consumer goods, right? That car is a part of that index, right? So again, the premise is about the whole, about the price index. The conclusion is about a particular car, which is a part. So again, we have a fallacy of division. And number 10, college grads earn 30% more than high school grads. So Pat must earn 30% more than Jan, since Pat went to college and Jan only went through high school. All right. So we have a premise about the whole, all college, high school grads. And we also have stuff about particular parts of those wholes, namely Jan and Pat. The reasoning goes from whole to parts. So once again, we have the fallacy of division. So a lot of answers are division. Again, I'm not sure why he has so many like that, but one reason I think is because this is a very common mistake people make. This number 10 especially illustrates the problem because people often talk in terms of averages over groups, and they're interpreted to be saying things about particular people, right? So this happens in a lot of discussions about, for example, men and women, right? So there's a claim, for example, that men score, or just say hypothetically, there's a claim men score higher on average than women on the SAT. I don't think that's true necessarily, but just hypothetically, right? When people make claims like that, then they're often interpreted to be saying something to the effect that every individual man scored higher on the SAT than every individual woman, or that if men score higher than women and I'm a man, I must therefore be smarter than women, or something like that, right? So people often make that kind of mistake where they hear averages about groups and they interpret it to be saying something specific about individuals who are members of those groups, right? And a lot of controversies, modern controversies, get started that way. There are claims about, for example, why aren't there more women in certain professions or disciplines? Like, why is philosophy, as an example, is dominated by men, or has been until recently, or like computer, tech positions are dominated by men. And when people give reasons for that, they sometimes talk about general trends, like, well, men are more interested in, doing X and Y, and those things go better with coding than with other occupations, right? And those kinds of claims are often controversial, maybe because they're not true. I mean, that's one reason, but also because they're sometimes misinterpreted to be saying things about individual people, right? So it's very important when you're talking statistics and averages that you don't interpret those claims to be about individuals, because they're not, right? An average is an average. Even if it's true that men on average are stronger than women on average, it doesn't follow that any particular man is stronger than any particular woman, right? So you can't take claims about averages to be true about every individual, right? So I don't know if that's why he's stressing this division fallacy in this exercise, but it's a lesson worth learning and something we'll talk more about when we get into statistical reasoning. Okay, so that's 8.5. You should be getting ready for the quiz, all right, which will be posted soon. The quiz will be, examples like this, where you'll have to identify fallacies that occur in passages that you read. You'll have a multiple attempts to take the quiz. And again, if you're having questions or problems doing these exercises, use the discussion forums to ask them and to get help.